Welcome to Out of the Blank.
Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Blank, and we're going to call it Unexpected Interruptions because at any time Nick's computer is apparently going to shut off, which he warns me before doing a conversational show. Perfect.
It's an old laptop, but I love it. So
Welcome back, Nick. Welcome back.
good to be back. I love the new setup. I'm glad you're back after a little hiatus, a little break. Going through a little of the burnout myself. It's important, for everyone listeners. Take some time, take a little break when you can, steal a little minute here and there, get back to full strength.
I had to go up to the Tibetan mountains and I had to meditate with the monks, and they taught
How did I
me a
miss
few
you there?
things. Huh? You were there too?
How did I miss you? I was there too.
Which temple?
Temple A.
Temple A. They have multiple. I hope there's not multiple temples. That's like having too many private islands. And I've looked it up on the show. There's a whole site that you can just buy private islands. I mean, the cheapest one's about a couple million, but dude, there's islands on there like, oh, this one's might be in your price range. I'm like, oh, no, it's not in my price range, not in my price range. But I don't know, that there has to be some I've been getting, the reason why I like chatting with you is because we can also talk like some lawyer stuff as well too, but also policies. Like policies I've been getting super interested in because I'm starting to notice like all the underlying or kind of unspoken agreements and everything. And it's mostly like how I'm wearing this shirt. This is AI art. Okay. But the site that I got the original design from has an unspoken like terms and policies that you cannot use any of their stuff to put on shirts. You can't do anything. They own every single right to every single image because that algorithm created it. Now I have questions. If it's a machine that you programmed, okay, yes, technically you created that machine, but at the same time, that machine goes and does its own thing. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like having a kid. You might be the parent, but your kid's over 18, they can do whatever the hell they want. So I start wondering where's the line for that. So what I did to fix that was I took this art and I funneled it through a bunch of different AI art things. So it's not just one apps, it's multiple. So now those will let you use theirs. So now you can't tell if it's from theirs.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, that you start getting into the soft IP type of law, which I dabbled in very briefly in law school. I took a writing class on IP, and it is a very new and emerging piece of law, which I'm very intrigued by. But when it comes like fair use and ownership comes from like all the different like trademarks, public domain, things like that, and then like adding or subtracting like resolution lines. I think that all plays a part of it. Again, this comes from a very ignorant point of view. So obviously, anything I say, you're going to want to talk to a lawyer in your market, in your area, when you ever deal with any sort of like IP interest, an IP issue. But all those types of things, like as soon as you log on to the website, you're bound by their terms of service, their terms of use. So I would have to defer to that because essentially you're entering into a contract with them.
But what about if they don't have a clear label for their terms and services or their term policies? Like for their thing, there's no bracket on their page that says terms and policies. There's no link to it on their website. So then eventually I had to go through like a deep Reddit page, and Reddit has been like the main source of information for just some person who's like 60 years old with a tinfoil hat on that sometimes says some really good shit. But they put something up there saying terms and policies, and here's the link to it. And it's like a secret link kind of type thing. Like, you know how some websites you click on it, they don't give you a bracket bar like normal ones. Instead, they'll have like, if you click the monk's eye page will lead you to the links. And it's like, what how is a regular person coming? Well, it's a secret website type deal. That's kind of what they did. They shoved it so down deep under. It's kind of like putting something in a contract, which has me honestly now when I see terms and services or conditions and stuff, I don't just hit accept and move on. I'm reading thoroughly through everything, because I think as a lawyer, you probably know it's just the words that you use. There's a very, very, very tricky way to be able to trick someone into getting maybe involved in something, or maybe getting liability off of them. Like, for instance, I work at a gym. When I'm signing up memberships, you have to do 7 initials and 1 final signature for the contract. Most of the time, I just go 7 initials, 1 signature. Here's initial number 1, initial number 2, initial number 3, initial number 4, initial number 5, and they do it all down the line. But nope, like, it's weird to me when someone goes, what am I signing? And then I have to read them the whole thing. And then you start getting into like, like you start really realizing like you could just firstborn child, you just sign that away.
There's a case, it's a contracts case. I can't remember the name of it. It was from my first year of law school, where it was like a credit card company, and they changed the terms of service, or it was something about requiring you to go through arbitration. And I'm trying to think of the name of it. I can't, the actual like fact pattern, because when it comes to cases, suits, like usually this stuff has happened before, or a version of it's happened before. So, excuse me, what you'll do, or what this case was, this credit card company, this couple sued a credit card company for, I forget what it was, something, and the credit card company said, no, you can't sue us. We have to go through binding arbitration, which is favorable to the credit card company, because that's how they pick the arbitrators. It was how their arbitration was set up. And the couple was like, no, we're not going through that. But the credit card company says, no, we changed the terms of service and we sent it to you in like a little folder. Like, when we send you your bill, all the terms of service, you should have read it. I think that got thrown out because it's something that was so apparent in galling, that it couldn't be done. Now, there are other note cases that stem from there that allow for like terms of services to be changed, altered, in ways that are, so what some people may view as unfair, some people may view as fair. Now, and this is where things come into play, where it comes to the cases that kind of go up a little bit higher in terms of like, appellate courts and Supreme Courts. It depends on who your plaintiff is, because certain people who argue before the Supreme Court, the US Supreme Court now, and certain people who argue before the appellate court, they allow, or they try to make sure the people who go before the Supreme Court or go before them have good, almost airtight cases. So hypothetically, if, let's say, I did that gym contract and I signed off on it, and that contract has a provision that says, again, you get my firstborn child, and I didn't read it, somebody like me who's a lawyer should have read that contract because I know better.
Yeah,
Whereas your regular person might not.
Yeah, that's the thing though. So then should there be a push or more of a incentive, I would say, for the general public to try and look through what they're doing? Like, I know you get a basic contract, but a lot of times people are so in their headspace, they can't get out of it, to the point where they're just willing to sign anything just to be able to get whatever they want to get done, I would say. Like, people come in, they want to work out. If they have to sign a contract, they're going to hurry up and scribble without even reading it because they need to do it. Like, you start noticing like, maybe like it's the people that you might see is like, oh, that's weird, that person wants to read the contract, why don't you just go ahead and sign it? It's like, is it really weird, or is it actually pretty intelligent to be able to do so? You just got to hope that you can soak up the information that you understand. That's the thing, is like, as much as you might have an airtight case, there's one person out there who's going to be able to wreck your case in an instant by just finding a legal loophole in something. I mean, there's
More or less.
I was just looking this up a second ago. I was trying to find like 9 insane legal, because like I said, I've been getting down into the policy agreements on stuff, mostly just because I started noticing so much when it comes to like all these updates that are happening now with all these big tech corporations, where I'm like, I really have to thoroughly look through a lot of this stuff, because I mean, I've read so much in and I've talked so much about how big tech, honestly, in my opinion, my little conspiracy is that they're all going to form into one giant blob. Like a monopoly, even though people say, well, you can't have monopolies, there's agreements to that. There's still unspoken monopolies. Gas, cable, all these things, they're monopoly sources. So here's a legal loophole. A dude drives kids to school every day with a tank. No kid wants to be bullied in school, and rolling up in a goddamn tank is the best way to ensure that your fellow students give the respect that you deserve. Britain's Nick Mead has 2 sons, 130 military vehicles worth over 2 million pounds, and what he's sure that oh, I don't know. I don't know who's writing this, but and what we're sure is the biggest penis the Commonwealth has ever seen. He drives his kid to school in a tank every day because what's the point of getting an education if you aren't striking fear into the heart of your enemies?
It's a valid point.
But I mean, obviously, like that's not a normal thing people would do. But I mean, is there a law against that school? Unless that school has a policy or some type of thing that he signed saying he can't drive his kid to school? Because what happens if you try and fight that? If you say you can't drive your kid to school in a tank?
Well,
You would assume that this was on illegal grounds of the longstanding. Oh, my computer's so.
civilians versus holy shit, a goddamn thing. It's a
Yeah,
pretty
I know.
interesting case. I didn't read that one in law school.
I'm trying
Um,
my computer is taking its sweet ass time.
no, no worries. So I'm gonna make a bunch of qualifiers here. It sounds like this is in England, which again I do not practice law in England. I only practice law in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Only where I'm licensed to practice. I'm not admitted in federal court yet. I'm hoping I actually need to figure out how to do that.
As long as the treads are modified to prevent road damage, you and your friends can roll up to 7-Eleven for a Slurpee and enough hardware to overthrow a banana republic. And no one can say whoever is writing this site is amazing.
Yeah.
You just need a $200 federal destructive device permit. Wait a minute. Hang on a second. Is there like, can anybody just be a mad scientist if they want?
I feel like there's definitely DMV regulations regarding certain things you can and cannot have, in depending upon the state you're in. I feel like that's gotta be true.
Is there a driving course that you can take to like, oh, you gotta know how to parallel park your fucking tank?
I'm gonna go out and again. This is didn't think we'd be discussing. Hey, can you drive a tank to to school?
I didn't know that
coming.
Google was going to give me this as a result.
Hey, there you go. That's why we're here. So I don't know. You'd have to again. If I could get it, I think maybe next time I come on, I'll have a T-shirt that says "Talk to a lawyer in your state or region," because that's the only way you'll be able to know. And even still, like I do personal injury. I don't know if you could, drive a tank in Rhode Island. I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably not, but I'd have to look it up. I'd have to do some research.
Well, if it's a disarmed tank, if it's a tank with no weapons in it, it's unfireable and it has road tread where you'd be able to drive on the road without any damage being caused to it, then what's the issue? It's not normal. Nobody's saying it's normal, but how many people in this fucking world are normal? A lot of people aren't normal.
No one's normal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm just wondering. I'm like, there's always that person that has like 1,000 wristbands on one arm to where it's cutting off circulation, and they look like they're about to pass out because they're getting no blood flow to that arm or whatever. Because they want to be different. They want to be extraordinary. Because everyone wants to kind of stand out in a group, but nobody wants to be secluded from one. You know what I mean? Like that's the weirdest thing to me. But
I don't know. So it's definitely. I mean, there are definitely a bunch of people out there who are odd to be odd, and driving a tank. I guess that's a way to stand out, I would think, but it would again, you're gonna have to whether or not you can use a disarmed tank or an unarmed tank with the proper treads, because I'm gonna assume there's no way or there's very little way, because even like I think there are requirements and rules for like National Guard trucks on how like often they can be used or driven or because of how big their tires are and how they can like eat up pavement. I think I could be wrong, but also there is like federal guidelines. That's actually one of the reasons. Again, going back, kind of the whole drinking lawyer thing. There's no constitutional requirement about a drinking age. 21, and it's tied to being 21 because of federal funding for roadways, for like the highways.
Okay, well, let's transfer it over to something else. What about insider trading? How come that insider trading is illegal, but we have people in Congress that are doing insider trading?
Because they write the rules.
So there's the thing is there's the loopholes. So is it
Yeah.
about a system that's set in place to be able to grease it, and once you find the tread or whatever groove that can kind of get you above the rest, to be able to find workarounds or cut arounds or cutting corners, whatever? Is that just the trick to the system? Like they don't are they going to fill up those potholes that people are just deciding to drive into? Like that's the thing is like if is there a rule out there where you can't do certain things depending on how much money you have? Bezos, for instance, the example I've used is that he's literally going to disassemble a bridge in the Netherlands just so he can drive his boat through and then reassemble it. To me, that's like, no, but he's got enough money to be able to do so. Fuck, he could probably buy the country. So you start getting into some weird territories where I don't think, as much as we have one person that runs a country, I don't think one billionaire should own a country. Also with private islands as well, too. I think those need to be heavily regulated. I think you need to have someone that's taking a tour around your island at least once every week. I understand your privacy laws might be enacted. Like you can't just have a random stranger come into your house. But I mean, even that goes with tenants. Half the time when a tenant's about to be removed from a place, what do? They go, oh, I'll show you the place when they're not there. It's like you're still walking into someone's private home, even though they're not there and you have the key there and you are the landowner. Like that makes me want to read over contracts a little bit more. I'm like, no, if at any point, if I don't decide I'm going to be moving out of here, you're going to evict me. I don't want you coming into my home at any point, even when I'm
So
not there.
yeah, there is. Let me try to. There's a bunch of hypos in there, so let me try to unpackage one at a time. So with landlord tenant, which is something I could probably speak to because again, I took property law in law school, and I remember most of it because up until very recently, when I bought a house, I've been a tenant. So when it comes to landlord tenant law, there are like every state has protections for tenants, some of which are greater, some of which are small. It depends upon the state you're in. And usually, sometimes even cities will have ordinances for your tenant and for your landlord. Most of what it comes down to, going back to it, is your lease. So you always want to read the lease agreement you have, regardless of who you are. So every time you sign a lease, read it. Blanket statement, do it. It's going to be highly recommended. So there are protections where a landlord can show, excuse me, your apartment while you're still in it because they have a duty to mitigate their damages when you either are evicted or move out. Now they can't just knock key, hey, I'm showing your apartment like random one time a day. They have to give you notice. They have to, I think it's somewhere between 24 to 48 hours of notice, just so that you can kind of clean things up and get things together. So there are other holdings and agreements. And again, talk to a lawyer in your area if you have any issues. But when you have things that are being withheld or not fixed, hot water, heat, depending upon where you are, maybe air conditioning, what they deem essential services. There are things where you can withhold payment of rent, but you have to do certain things. You can't just say, fuck off, I'm not paying you my rent. You have to like put it in like a separate bank account or something like that. Again, you're going to want to do a lot of, you're going to want to talk to somebody like me who specializes in landlord tenant law, or contact your local legal services. Usually you can talk to somebody who will help you out for free. So you can do that when it comes to landlord tenant. When it comes to Jeff Bezos and his disassemble assembly of a bridge, I honestly don't know. Again, it's in the Netherlands, so it's a completely different area or different country. And Dutch law, I'm not familiar with in any way, shape, or form. I would think if this was the United States, it would depend on who owns the bridge. If it's like the city, the town, the state, the federal government, it would come from, they could file, they could file an injunction against Jeff Bezos, or he couldn't do those things. He could then say, "Hey, I'm not harming the bridge." If it's, I think it's a historical landmark if I read it correctly. So if this was in the United States, but it's not, it's the Netherlands. Historical landmarks have certain protections, which they can't be, disassembled, assembled, things like that. There are a lot of different little threads you can pull of how you can either like attack it or defend it. So
Well, okay,
there
so
are a lot of different things.
maybe the
You can,
major point I'm trying to get to is the factor of, do you think that there should be just better? I think I don't really want to put restrictions on people. I don't think there really should. I would like people to have as much freedom as they want. It's what's one of the greatest things about this country is being able to, like, freedom of speech, for instance. But there's obviously laws that are set in place because they are important to, you can't kill somebody. You're going to go to jail
yeah,
for that. But I also think that there's a lot of regulation when it comes to the common person, and it seems like the above class gets a little bit more of, I guess, pull through when it comes to those types of things. Um, Mostly, I think there needs to be like a worldly claim of billionaire clauses where if you have a certain amount of money, no matter if it's like more money than more money than a whole entire country, basically. I think there still needs to be some regulations and some above guidelines since you've hit a new echelon of success, I would say, or a percentile that is above the normal by a small percentage. Mostly if you have billions of dollars, I think there needs to be, like, if you're going to buy a private island, if you're even thinking or marinating on the idea and you have enough money to do so, I think you need to have some type of people that come by above the norm. They go, well, what about my privacy laws? Man, your privacy laws don't really fucking matter, man, when you're in every single tabloid magazine and you have billions of dollars. I don't think that starts to work anymore. I think you're now entering a new area, but then that goes into the, well, aren't I just a person? Why am I above the normal? I don't know. Why do you have billions of fucking dollars? And it's because, I mean, what's going to stop them from doing something else? Like, why? Bill Gates is the best example. Why the hell is he creating all this shit and getting involved in vaccines and all this type of stuff? You start entering weird territory where a billionaire shouldn't really be, or I start looking at how everything is interconnected. And as scary as a part as being a content creator, censorship is probably the biggest issue I haven't, like, I guess, a problem with. Mostly because with all these big tech corporations, I think now you could probably fight the claim that they're so big, they're basically utilities. And then now they have to have set laws and standards and policies with those utilities. And one of those things is the idea that, well, these people could ban you off their platform because they are a private owned company. Not anymore. If Google can shut the whole fucking internet down in 2012 or 2009 or something like that for 45 minutes to where no one could access the internet, you should start regulating these companies as such and being like, you might have a little bit more power. You know how, like, a superstar athlete or some type of person will say, like, fuck this on I like baloney, and you're like, oh, every guess you got to be careful what you say because you're now an influencer and now you have a right as an influencer to make sure you're not spreading lies and all these types of things. They didn't ask for that, but now they have a new set standards that is implied. It's not written down, it's implied.
yeah. Well,
So
I
maybe
mean,
with these
yeah,
Google corporations and all these web corporations, there should be more of an implied thing of, like, yeah, you can't have your phone constantly tracking all your shit. You can't, yeah, I get you put, okay, like, how many times now you log into a site, they say, we're going to track your data. Is that okay? And then most people don't say no. Like, I'm not going to fucking let you track my shit. But are they still doing it at such a small scale? Because you still are accessing their website, which now gets to a point of like, well, what about the internet regulations? I don't think anybody predicted, your founding fathers didn't predict that the fucking internet would be as big as it is now. I don't, or they would have taxed it. They easily would have put a tax on that shit.
yeah. So have you seen Don't Look Up yet?
No.
It's actually pretty funny. It's on Netflix. I thought it was hysterical. It's an allegory for climate change, but it was written by yeah, Adam McKay, and it was written before COVID, and they were filming it like during COVID.
The guy from Talladega Nights?
Yeah, yeah, like
Okay.
Talladega Nights,
Step Brothers?
Anchorman, Step Brothers, yeah, and he like I think he's quoted a few times in saying like I had to make the script like 20% more ridiculous because of COVID, because what the plot of the movie was happening in real life, so I had to like change it, make it more ridiculous to reflect the whole satire thing. But it's there's similar parts and things like that in that movie, which reminded me of it because it was I enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. But to again to unpack a lot of that, I think that what is lost, because what's lost a lot in our lives and in the whole situation, the Constitution is, I think it was written and signed it was written, yeah, written and signed in 1787, and then adopted in 1789. Around the time it was adopted, I forget how many words it is, but the Bill of Rights added like 1.5 times the amount of words to the original Constitution. And a lot of people who, like, didn't sign it, signed it, were like the people who supported the Bill of Rights because it outlined certain rights that were inalienable, that you were guaranteed to have, and things like that. And there were other people who were against it because they didn't think it were necessary. And I think it was Patrick Henry or some other, like, not founding father, but like leading government official, hated it because, like, in the future, and this may be a misquote, but I remember seeing it a few times, so I'm going to say it's correct, saying that in the future someone will think that the Bill of Rights is only dedicated to what's right, the rights that you can have, and nothing else is valid. But within the first 5-10 years of the Constitution existing, it was radically changed. And then sometime thereafter, within the first 100 years of the document, you added the 13th Amendment, exclusion of slavery, the 14th Amendment, which is huge for due process, 15th Amendment for voting rights for people of color, like all of these different things within the first 100 years that changed radically this document. So I would think, when it comes to the founding fathers, they would look at this internet, they would have no idea what to look at or how to write it, because it's not something they ever could have foreseen. It's not something that I don't think anyone, even when the internet first was created,
Well, that's
could
the
have
that's the
reasonably
biggest issue
foreseen.
I have with
Yeah.
even putting a restriction or using these corporations as utilities, because we don't that did not taste good. When you are making a law or you're making something like that, you can only see what the progress is made so far. And the internet keeps changing and evolving so fast that I don't know what the next prediction is going to be. So I would hate to write up a fucking contract for them to be like, okay, you're going to fall into this, and deals with censorship. It deals with all those types of stuff. But what's going to be 5 years from now? Maybe we do that, and then we can't make them sign another one. You know what I mean? We can't bring them back every single month after they develop something new. But then we starting to get into territory where you might have to consult with your psychic or something, where we need to talk about foresight. Maybe the fact of like looking towards the future, where is this going to go? And I think after finding out that Google shut down the internet for every single person for 45 minutes from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., I start going, maybe we need to kind of have that conspiratorial thinking, that outside type thinking of how big is this going to go? How far is this going to get? I mean, does anybody really understand Disney? Like, does anybody? Like, I hate to enter that territory of like conspiratorial, but I mean, they seem like they fucking own everything. That should be a restriction for a company, no matter if you're going under subsets of name. We know people that are probably in Congress, probably in our government, deep in the government, that are finding ways to put their money into offshore accounts or put it into a different country. Half of the people that are billionaires have their money overseas somewhere because they can get outside of our regulations. Okay. Now we need to start looking at this as a just basis to be like, maybe we need to write up some things and some new laws. They're not going to be happy with it, but at the same time, you're not going to have as much pushback. You're seeing much more pushback every time a law gets done, because you know who that law affects? The common people. What about the people that are in that small percentile that's above the normal? The billionaires, the people that can just buy up a whole city. Like, what the hell is that? You shouldn't be able to own land like that. You can be able to own a small bit of property, but when it comes to where people live at the thousands, then we have an issue.
There's actually well, it's something that I've thought for a while, and you can, it's something that's been a lot in vogue because of, I think it was, what's the name of that, cinema and uh Manchin, yeah, Joe Manchin, the two Democratic senators who were like blue dog and you know always kind of nerf things. um the 17th Amendment, which not a lot of people know about because it's something that only random, well, it's something that's, it was when was it signed? It was like late 1900, like late 19 teens. Like, I want to say it's like 1917, 1918. You know what it is?
Mm-mm.
Fun little trivia fact on a nice Sunday little morning. Um, it's the direct election of senators for up until like again, the 1900s, senators were appointed by like state senators. So, I wouldn't elect, you and I wouldn't elect our state senators or the senators to the US Senate. They would just, we would elect our state reps who would then appoint the senators. That's how the system worked. And then up until then, that's how it did work. And then it was abolished. And then you had direct election of senators, which, if you look at from that moment on, the Senate has completely changed in terms of how business is done, business is worked, and how resolutions are signed. The filibuster used to be, I think, it was 3/5 of the Senate. So it was like, I forget how much it was. It was either 3/5. So it was like 75 senators or 70 senators had to agree to end debate. Now it's 60. So they changed it. I want to say during, again, I'd have to look it up, but they changed it either during like the 50s or 60s to like help get business done a little bit quicker because people were just filibustering all the time. Now, like they want to change it till so it's a simple majority, which is kind of dumb, but that's a completely different thing when it comes to like Senate rules and things like that. To kind of get back to where you were coming from, the problem with all these different rules and policies is lobbyists and people who have more money than God and corporations who have more money than God can just throw billions and billions of dollars at laws they don't like because it's going to save them money over time. I see that a lot again, working in law. There are insurance companies out there, just kind of bring it back to something I can talk with a little bit more authority about. There are insurance companies who will offer like a claim, let's say a claim is worth $1,000. There are insurance companies who are like, yeah, I know your claim is worth $1,000. I'm only going to offer you 800, 900 to settle it because they know, and I know the amount of time, money, and effort I spend in litigation to get that extra $200 is going to completely nerf whatever my client is going to net. So they'll like, yeah, I know I'm going to screw you from like a couple $100 because I know in the long run it's going to help me because you're not going to sue. You're not going to, file suit for $100. That's ridiculous. And to be fair, it is. But then it starts to kind of, that line creeps a little bit more down. Now it's 200 and 300 and then 400.
What's the issue then? Because if you have giant corporations that can just last out people in court, like Disney does that, any type of corporation you can really think of, they have enough money to keep a lawsuit going on forever. There's a guy, Phil Demers, who's been suing. I think it's not SeaWorld, it's some type of water world or something like that in Canada. He's been on a lawsuit for them for 9.5 years. And basically what that company is doing is that they're just going to keep making him spend and literally go into debt and keep postponing and postponing because they have the money to keep the court case going for as long as they fucking want. It's like me trying to sue Google. If I try and sue Google, they'll just last me out in court. I don't have enough money to keep up with that. I'll be done in a day. But maybe that means that is that a factor of maybe we don't have enough judges to handle the court case, or are we not having like there needs to be a better process of stuff? Half the time you get a speeding ticket or half the time you get a court case, it's months out. So maybe does that need our court systems need to be fixed? Because the answer to fixing lobbyists, there are bureaus of investigation that are designed to, and I guess, go after people who are maybe embezzling money or something like that. But they can easily get their hands greased with a little bit of cash. And at the same time, I mean, they only want a narrative. If like the reason why Trump got his tax thing, oh, you evaded taxes and all this stuff, was because the narrative switched to where they wanted him out of office. They wanted to take him down. They wanted him out of the presidential whatever candidacy. And that's why they started doing it. Like you got to incentivize them somehow. And it's funny because as much as you can incentivize them to go after something, you can incentivize them to turn the fuck around. And it makes it harder for the common person that doesn't have the connections to be able to get through these types of things where it's like a friend to friend business. Now, here's where it gets funny. Andrew Cuomo hired his brother, and everyone's like, why the fuck did he hire his brother? It's like, well, would you want to elect a person that didn't want to hire his brother? Like if I was a giant corporation owner or something like that and my friend needed a job, I'm giving my friend the fucking job without even a thought of an interview. But people go, well, no, you got to be best fit for the position. I mean, his brother was parking cars before he got him like a major giant like salary and shit. So it's a little bit weird, but at the same time, it's like, but just because they're family, should they not talk? Like, there's a weird connection thing that's on a just basis of per case, I would say. But does that mean we just need more people involved in court cases and judge positions or things of this sort? Or do we need to have an overall effective machine that can handle it better without any type of emotional connection to? Because if you're looking at a judge, for instance, that is giving maybe life to a person for killing someone, you know what changes the outcome of what that decision might be is the fact of, like, does he have a kid or not? You're telling me that guy's about to go to life in prison after killing someone, which he's supposed to do, but he has a 3-year-old kid who's going to now grow up without a dad. That definitely weighs into your opinion a little bit. And I think there needs to be an overall perfected system where we don't have something like that. And I mean, and in a case, maybe it was a self-defense thing. But at the same
But yeah,
time, there's all these little small little, like, kind of, I guess, segments or type of branch off categories. Like, people want to amend the Constitution. They think the Constitution should be amended. I don't know. I really don't know, because I feel like with anything that we amend to the Constitution, they're going to find some way to be able to stick a loophole in there. And we have enough loopholes as it is. There's not a covering of loopholes. There's just people adding a band-aid on top of a loophole that creates a loophole.
I'm thinking right now because I think there's 28.
You think on
Again,
this
I'm not.
show?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Gotta
Well,
spit
again,
it out. You
I
gotta
know. No. You gotta.
no, that's not
Lawyer,
fun.
you gotta stop, think, process, make sure I'm giving you, not bad advice or wrong advice.
Be
At the very least,
honest.
as
If
close
me
as I
and you
can.
were in a court case against each other, you'd be a little bit intimidated, right?
Oh, terrified.
Be like dead serious, dead serious. They're like, no jokes
A little
aside.
bit.
I just because
What?
I'm able to, like, I don't know if it's luck, I don't know what it is, but I slip into some shit where you're like, God damn it, he just pulled one over on. I was like, it was all accidental. I
There
promise.
you go. Unrelated. Earlier you were talking about taxes, and I just started chuckling because I thought, you ever see Breaking Bad? Yeah. So there's a moment in Breaking Bad where Saul Goodman's talking to Jesse Pinkman and talking about like taxes and the IRS. He's like, hey, if they got Capone, they can get you. So
Yeah.
pay your taxes too. Unless you're, I guess, a billionaire, then you can get away with it. But or 100 millionaire, I guess, if you're
Do
Trump.
homeless people
Oh,
have to pay taxes?
I think so. Everybody has to pay. Well, I read a study about how income tax isn't just your only tax, because obviously you're paying, and anytime you buy something, you're paying taxes unless you live in New Hampshire or Florida. I think they don't have state income tax. No, either Florida or unless your state doesn't have state income tax or like a sales tax.
Well,
Like
sales tax,
anytime.
Delaware is the first state, so it doesn't have sales tax.
Oh, nice.
There's no taxes in
Um,
Delaware.
yeah, that's why a lot of companies or corporations are in Delaware, too. But let me try to. I'm trying to think because um, the Constitution. I think this is the longest period the Constitution has gone without an amendment in the history of the Republic. So it is something. I mean, I'm not saying you should just amend the Constitution to amend the Constitution, but it is something that has been done with relative frequency throughout our 200 plus years as a country. Now, when it comes to all of like our governmental systems and like courts, like the court system, again, it's state to state and sometimes even like county to county. And a lot of right now, I think it was in the 80s where like Congress started passing, like 80s and 90s, where Congress started passing what are called mandatory minimums for like drug crimes. And that's now getting a lot of pushback, even like it was even getting pushed back like 10, 15 years ago, because you had these like one-time offenders like who got caught, and you get like overzealous prosecutors, trying to like put everything up. And you want to talk about a system that's overwhelmed. I got a few friends who are public defenders. That's an overwhelmed system. And you get this situation or these situations where non-violent drug offenders are getting 10, 15 years because the judge has no can show no leniency because he or she is not allowed to, based upon the letter of the law. Now, it's tricky because I mean, judges, depending on the judge, um, I should say all judges are fantastically smart people, and it should always give me exactly what I want at any time I so choose. But a lot of judges have, especially in like superior courts and things like that, have a lot of experience in doling out sentences. They can take into consideration a wide variety of things, past behavior of the defendant, the nature of their crime, the victims in the crime. A lot of judges, and like in hearing them talk and hearing them how they view sentencing, listen to the victims a lot. They don't really listen. They listen to the defendant because the defendant's going to say, like, if the defendant allocutes and says, like, "Look, I'm sorry, like I was going through this, I was going through that," and then has like an army of people behind them that say, "Oh, someone's Johnny's a great guy, he's a good father, he's a good son, he's a good brother, he's a good cousin, please show leniency on him." Most judges will take that into consideration, but they really, from everything I've heard and read and listened to, they listen to the victims more and will give extra weight to that. Now, like some of the, I think there was a few crimes. It was a documentary about. You ever see the doc? It was Beanie Mania. Have you seen that one yet? It's pretty good. It's on HBO Max.
Beanie
It's
Babies?
about Beanie. It's about Beanie Babies, and the head of Beanie Babies got convicted of like tax fraud or tax evasion, and it was like the maximum sentence was like 2 years in prison, and I think he got like probation and a fine. And like because the judge just like in some situations like that, it's the judge wanting to like not really, sometimes the judge just doesn't care, and it's also because they don't want their sentence to get thrown out on appeal, because you can always appeal a sentence depending, well, I shouldn't, you can't always appeal a sentence. I'm 80% sure, 90% sure you can appeal your sentences depending upon how it goes and where it is. But also, most judges don't want their rulings to be appealed or to be like stricken down. When you see, it's rare now where a court case gets like overturned or an appeal is granted. Because I'm trying to think of the last one I
Well,
heard of.
what about Bernie Madoff? He did a bunch of embezzlement things or scams with people and stuff. Like Steve Jobs was involved. A lot of people gave a lot of money to this guy,
Yeah.
and then he ran off with their money. Now, is there a recourse of action for that? Like, can they sue, or was it like, hey, I mean, there was
Oh
not
yeah.
really okay.
So and again, it was a documentary. I can't remember the name of it, but it had like Robert De Niro was in it and like a few other like big stuff. Hank Azaria, he was in it too. I can't remember the name of it, but they like his victims sued Bernie Madoff, Bernie Madoff's wife, Bernie Madoff's kids, Bernie Madoff's grandkids, cousins, because they were trying to find where the money was, but there was no money. It was just a Ponzi scheme. So it's an old thing. You can't get blood from a stone, and you can set up like a victims fund. So like hypothetical, and I use this example all the time with my clients. Hey, like you could, like, let's say hypothetically, you can sue defendant A, and you can get you can spend 5-6 years in court, and they don't they don't own anything. They own a car, they own their house, and from all I can say, that's all they own. Or, and most states, I think, I know at least Rhode Island and Massachusetts, because again, that's where I practice, have what's called the Homestead Exception in their in some statutes, where you can, if you declare bankruptcy, you get to keep your house. You don't lose your house. Or you, if someone sues you personally, you can't attach a judgment to somebody's house. They're like primary residence. Now,
Squatters'
if I
rights.
owned, well, no, not squatters' rights. It's the homestead exception. So like if I own my house, but I also own an island, you can attach the island, but you can't attach my house. So if you go through court, you get your judgment of $1 million, can't pay $1 million all at once. So they set up a payment plan, and then you get your payment the first month, payment the second month, payment the third month, and then nothing after month 4 because they declared bankruptcy and now that debt is discharged. You know,
Okay. But with squatters' rights, though, like that's weird territory in its own. Like if you're with someone for long enough and they have enough of their stuff there, then you legally can't tell them to leave.
I don't. Yeah, property law was never my strong suit. I don't know anything about squatters' rights, and that's something that is wildly different state to state. Um, and it depends on lease agreements, verbal contracts, things like that. Again, you'd have to talk to somebody who knows property law, landlord tenant law
So
in your area.
under Texas law, a squatter can make an adverse possession claim after possessing a property continuously for at least 10 years. After the 10-year period has passed, the squatter is no longer considered a criminal trespasser.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not licensed in Texas, so I don't really know. And adverse possession and squatters' rights was not my strong suit in I think I got like a C in property law in my 1L year.
You got a C?
And I got to see. I was not. Yeah, property law was not my bag.
Did you get grounded?
No, I was an adult.
So apparently there was, I don't know if you saw GoFundMe trending.
No, what's up with that?
It's a lot, like a lot.
Oh,
GoFundMe
God.
backtracks on redistributing money for Canadian truckers, the people that are doing the giant drive that no one's showing on the news. But Elon Musk called out GoFundMe professional thieves for withholding $10 million from anti-vax rally. So just because the political thing got in there, I mean, GoFundMe was never supposed to really be some type of person that was like if you have a bunch of people, if you start a GoFundMe, the whole point of the page was all right. So I'll read this real quick. Tesla founder Elon Musk slammed GoFundMe for hypocrisy after the fundraising site cut ties with a convoy of Canadian truckers who oppose vaccine mandates. Double standard, quipped Musk on Twitter while sharing a screenshot of a June 2020 tweet GoFundMe posted in support of Seattle's lawless CHOP or the Capitol Hill occupied protest, an autonomous zone where riots broke out and police were not permitted to enter. He also called GoFundMe professional thieves. Thousands of truckers in the Freedom Convoy rolled into Ottawa on January 29th, many of them blocking roads outside of Parliament buildings, honking loudly and brandishing Canadian flags and fuck Prime Minister Justin Trudeau banners. So I mean, think about it. You're a site that literally which is always interesting because I had friends that used to GoFundMe to raise money for maybe a friend of theirs that had cancer. Then they had all this money raised. The person died. What do you do with that money? Do you give the money back? No, because you gave that money willingly away to that person. Same thing if I have a Patreon. If I have a Patreon and everyone's able to donate $5 a month, which I do have a Patreon, pay what you want, people.
Shout out Patreon.
But if people want to pay money and then they don't like an episode that I do, they can stop the funding payments, but I don't have to give them their money back. Like there's that kind of embrace. But GoFundMe was a site to raise money for a special event or some type of thing. When the $10 million, so that goes straight to them. Nobody gets the money. Like the people don't get their money back. That's now money that's just gone, all because of a political thing.
Well, I think last time I was on was the episode where I was just shouting out random people to try to get sponsors. This is the episode where I'm just talking about like, oh, did you see this episode of this TV show or this documentary or that documentary or this movie? Because you were talking about GoFundMe. I just like instantly thought of that South Park episode, and I was just the Washington Redskins Go Fund Yourself episode.
I haven't seen South Park.
Never mind then. It was fun. It was about essentially it was GoFundMe, where they were trying to slack off and not do it, get paid to not do anything, and it ended up working out. But when it comes again, to bring it around, you have to look at the terms of service. See what we did.
Well, apparently GoFundMe blocked the release of almost 10 million donations to the group earlier Friday in connection with the promotion of violence and harassment during the Ottawa protest. It says we now have evidence from law enforcement that the previously peaceful demonstration has become an occupation with police reports of violence and other unlawful activity, GoFundMe wrote in a statement. Donors have until February 19th to ask for a refund, and the rest of the money of the group raised would be allocated to credible and established charities chosen by Freedom Convoy organizers, the site said. So they can still choose where they want to distribute it.
And well, that's the other thing. Like maybe GoFundMe changed again. Maybe they changed the terms of service and didn't read. Now, a lot of people or a lot, again, to kind of go back to what we were talking about at the very, very, very beginning, there are a lot of Supreme Court cases, or a lot of cases that really should like go further, but it's because the plaintiff's attorneys don't want to open Pandora's box. They don't want to go to that next step because once you get past district court, because like there's the federal district court, which is like the first type of court you would go to. And the federal district court, I think there's 90 district courts across the United States. And the district courts only represent the district they're in. So if I go before the Rhode Island District Court and they agree with my findings, that law only pertains to Rhode Island, that district. If I go up to the First Circuit of Appeals, now that's a bigger umbrella and it encompasses more area. So anytime, and I would recommend everybody uses, to follow the U.S. Supreme Court. When you look at the Supreme Court cases and the people who are the plaintiffs in those cases, because they're bringing forth a cause of action, usually against something that's strenuous. Good example, the case that tried to take down the 1964 Civil Rights Act was, just to kind of give everyone like a brief overview. It was the Civil Rights Act. Congress used the Interstate Commerce Clause in their power, the regulatory power, in order to regulate the civil rights. Not vote. I'd have to look more into it about whether it was how the voting rights aspect of it was affected, but it was mostly they used their to desegregate the South using their interstate commerce power. Because if you go to a lunch counter in Tennessee, like in there, like you're coming from different parts of the country, the bread is flown in from down out west, the meat is brought in from the South, the tomatoes are brought in from all the different parts of it. So what the plaintiffs did in order to fight it, it's the Heart of Atlanta Hotel versus whoever it was, because how can you impact commerce in the heart of Atlanta? And that was where it came from. Better examples also, the Doma case. I can't remember the name of the person who did it. Not the Prop 8 case that was Huntington, but the Defense Against Marriage Act case. The people who sued the federal government were married legally because New York allowed for same-sex marriage at the time, and the federal government obviously didn't. So it was a very keen, distinct piece of law where this couple could bring forth a case against the federal government, and still, because they could, if they were, since they were married in New York and she could get state benefits but couldn't get federal benefits, it was a complete clash of law. And they had been married for like 20 something years, one of the first couples to do it. And, it was a very strong plaintiff, and that's what a lot of people do. Same thing, DC versus Heller, the Heller decision, when it first came out. And it was one of like the first like really distinct Supreme Court cases I remember reading. Heller had like lived in either Maryland or Virginia, legally had a gun, moved to DC, couldn't have that gun anymore. So it's anytime your rights are being either constricted or withheld, those are the plaintiffs that bring forth. Now, a lot of people, again, who argue before the Supreme Court and other attorneys, what they do in order to make sure that bad law doesn't get written or that the proper plaintiff is identified and used, sometimes they won't file a writ of certiorari for the Supreme Court, or they'll knock it down at the federal or at the federal appeals level, so they don't get level to that next stage. Because if you're a plaintiff and you get a good decision in federal district court, or you get a bad decision in federal district court, if you're a plaintiff and the attorney's like, look, I don't want to take this any further. Like, if you want to go see somebody else, you can. But if I go further to the like First Circuit of Appeals, Ninth Circuit, if I go to the next Circuit of Appeals and I get knocked down again, Now I've done a lot more damage to this area, and they start to carve up laws, because right now the way kind of going back further, the way that Congress and laws are being written on the federal level isn't super great. There are not a lot of bills are getting passed with relative like frequency. Not a lot of like legislative pieces, budgets, infrastructure, but not like social programs or social cuts. It's mostly coming from lawsuits. It's coming from the judicial branch. So not a lot of people. Well, you're going to see a lot more cases being petitioned to the Supreme Court probably in the next few years, and you're going to look at a lot of plaintiffs who are very compelling in their own rights, because the Supreme Court can always say no. They're the only court that can choose their own docket, which is kind of interesting in a weird way, to me
Is
at least.
like when you were talking, I got reminded of the case where the people that owned some type of like bed and breakfast or something like that, but some a gay couple wanted to have their wedding there, and they refused service to those people. Now, what's the just cause for that? Because are they in their rights to be able to refuse? Because it's their home. They don't want to have a wedding there. They don't have to have a wedding there, no matter who it is. But then also in the other rights as well, too, is, I mean, they took that to court and everything. Is that a hate crime? Like, is that just weird territory where it's like blurred lines and it's on a just case basis, depending on whoever the judge is that gets to kind of qualify that? Or is there better establishment connections to be able to deal with a situation like that as well, too?
Testing my con law knowledge on a nice little Sunday morning. I'm trying to
Because I mean,
remember.
it leads into a deeper question with like
Yeah. No, so
should we have more like with bathrooms? Can you have a person that says they identify as for instance, during the pandemic, did you notice that the dude got sentenced to life in prison, said that he identifies as a woman, and they sent him to a woman's prison. Then he started having sex with the women people that were there. That guy cheated the fucking system. So I'm just saying, is there like better regulations on these just case basis, or how do they take it? Is it depending on who the judge is? Hopefully you get maybe a more PC judge or a more woke judge than if you have an older judge. It's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like during the Rittenhouse trial, they're sitting there talking about pixels in a cell phone picture being modulated, which was a fucking pull out of a hat, dude. That was insane as shit. But the judge is like, pickles? What pickles? Like it was fucking like the dude didn't
yeah,
know what the
funny.
hell was going on. He was out of his realm. I felt uncomfortable for him because he was an old ass.
So there are qualifiers in the Supreme Court where there's there's levels of scrutiny. There's rational basis, rational bias, intermediate scrutiny, and strict scrutiny. And there are certain groups, classes that fall under each. The only thing I can really, it's national origin and race always falls under strict scrutiny. Gender is intermediate scrutiny, or rational basis with teeth if you're God, what's her name? Sandra Day O'Connor. She's the one who coined that term. And then rational basis is pretty much everybody else. And what that means is each level of scrutiny is how a judge is supposed to look at the case, the class. Now, homosexual couples, transgendered people, and I think homosexuality, I believe, as of right now, when I was in law school, which again is a long time ago now at this point, but as far as I remember, I think that is rational basis, meaning that the state or the government has a rational base in order to discriminate, or that they have a reasonable way to do some sort of discrimination. Can't think of a good example off the top of my head right now, but I believe that's the area that they're in. Now, intermediate scrutiny, which is gender, mostly gender, that's where they need a more reasonable way or a more strict way. It's looked at a little bit more strictly, but a really good example of that, there was a case a few years ago where I'm trying to think it.
Well, I got a case for you. What about there's a case of that lady that was calling out We Spa. I don't know if you ever seen that video. Have you ever seen it? There was I'll pull it up. There was a lady outside of a spa, and there was a guy that was in the woman's bathroom, but he identified as a woman, and she was upset because she had her daughter with her. I'm gonna pull it up real quick.
So I think that would still be rational basis because it's not a women's right; it's a trans right.
Well,
I believe
they did a protest and everything as well too. So I'm curious to.
it would have to it would have to be from, again, I'm not a constitutional law scholar, but from what it sounds like, it would still be rational basis. I'm trying to, it was a case I'm trying to think of about intermediate scrutiny because it was a woman who sued a police department because she couldn't pass the test, like the physical test, because like she wasn't as fast or couldn't do as many pull-ups because the test was geared, and they sued on the basis of the test. I believe either, I'm trying to remember the holding of the case, but it was something that was, it was a central holding of either you could have a lower standard for women, like based upon whatever, or was no, like this standard, yeah, oh no, I'm trying, yeah, it was, I'd have to look up the name of the case and the case itself because I'm trying, it was, I can't even remember the central holding of it.
Why would you pick an example that you can't?
I thought I had it. I
Come
just
on,
couldn't
Nick.
remember. Let me do my own little research right now.
Hang on real quick. I want to play this video real quick.
All right, go for it.
I gotta make sure I got this. All right. Here we go. So this is the and this is actually labeled in Wikipedia now as the We Spa controversy. So that's interesting. That there's a whole page developed to it, like it's a conspiracy theory or something like that. And you get this actual video. Is it showing on your?
Yep.
Okay.
With men that just say they are a woman and they can go down there with their penis and get into the women's section. Is that what you're saying? What really? What law? What law? So women can go into the men's with their breasts. Okay.
This should happen. We're not going to come back.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't come back either. Yeah, get your money back.
Everything.
You got a man with his penis talking about he's a woman. He ain't no woman. Yeah, give her money back.
Are you talking about a transgender person?
There's no such thing as transgender. He has a okay? He has a penis. His penis is hanging out. Okay. No.
So she said something I didn't even know was in the video, which was when she said, there's no such thing. That's insane.
I'm laughing at he's not transgender, he's a dick. That was funny.
Yeah, because she's like, there's a man with his penis out. I mean, what do you do at that point? Is that a just person basis where it's like, if they can't, the spas, like, let's take it even off the gender topic, masks. What happens if you walk into a facility where they say like that? Now they don't even tell you that like in my state, they don't tell you that it's required to have a mask and stuff, but they said they suggest that you have one. But people don't care. Like I remember walking into Walmart and I was like, wait, are the mask back? And she was like, well, no, but we would like you to wear one. You could tell like they're implying that they want to tell you to wear one, but you don't have to. So is it like a per state basis? What is it? Is it the laws of the state? Is it the laws of society? Because I mean, that video that sparked up so much controversy. They had riots of mothers with children, and they all on a Saturday were protesting this spa out front with picket signs and everything like that because of this thing that was going on. But the spa didn't have, they were trying to be PC and more woke about things like that. So what is that? Is that I mean, it gets into sketchy territory, but with a mask thing, for instance, if I'm in a building,
yeah.
Well, if I'm in a place and they have a sign that says they do required masks, but nobody has stopped me and said anything about it, and they're like, oh, that's just Paul, let Paul go through. Then I go through and I'm working out, and then maybe I get into an argument with the supervising person. Can they kick me out or tell me to put on a mask, even though they never stopped me at the door to be able to do so? And they actually let me go through without saying anything to me now that I've already been in here for like an hour. So it's kind of like squatters' rights in a sense. You're not there 10 years, but you're there for an hour and a half eating lunch and everything like that. And then all you do is you get into an argument with someone and they immediately force this on you.
Ultimately, it comes down to rational basis. And then it comes down even further. Public health is a lot different than gender issues or gender class. When it comes to public health isn't like strict scrutiny, rational basis, and intermediate scrutiny. It's a different type of thing. Now there's again, I know there's the thyroid Mary case from like the 1900s where like essentially this woman who she was a are you familiar with that at all?
Mm-mm.
Essentially a woman was a housekeeper and random people in her household that she was tending kept dying or getting sick of thyroid. So this woman had thyroid, was giving it to people and like cutting up, like essentially cooking and cleaning and doing all this stuff. And she was essentially, the courts held she was allowed to essentially be segregated to this area and not like touch anything for public health. Now, I don't think that you would do that again, or you'd be completely segregated because it was once in a random thing occurrence. But businesses could, as far as public health is concerned or is aware, can regulate their own. You could probably put it under a dress code, like Planet Fitness for a gym example. Like you can't wear certain things, and you sign up for that when you sign your contract. And if you do, they can like say, "Hey, look, I'll give you like." I remember it was a buddy of mine got kicked out of Planet Fitness because he was wearing like this wife beater tank top, and like, no, you can't wear that. Like, I'll give you a shirt. It's, I don't want to wear this shirt. It's like, no, then get out. And I think he canceled his membership and never went back. But they can do the business. Yeah, it's like a dress code, I would think, more than public health. Obviously, public health comes into a play of it now, but a lot of times a business can do certain things so long as they don't rub up against hurting protective classes. Now, this is another case that came up in the Supreme Court that it was a woman sued the police department. Again, not the one we were talking about earlier, but sued the police department because they were making her tie her hair a certain way, or she had to wear her hair a certain way in order for her safety, so that it didn't get pulled or like scrapped or whatever. And it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said no, the police can do that because it's you're not being discriminated against because you're a woman. You're being discriminated against because of your hair, and the hair isn't something that's protected because the police department has a rational basis to discriminate, to make decisions that may or may not affect people. And again, to go back again, I think there was a test that the police department had that disproportionately would that African Americans were scoring disproportionately worse on, than white people were. And I forget the area, but the central holding was based upon the data that was collected by the defendants in that case. They found that no, like the police department in this test, which you should have a test to be a cop, the way the test was conducted, the questions on the test, even though it was neutral on its face, its underlying premise was ended up being racist or would fall under strict scrutiny because of how it was disproportionately affecting African Americans in that situation. So they had to throw out the test and get a new test.
What about like for instance, Harvard? Harvard's its own institution, but they made it harder for Asian people to get into their school because they noticed that there was an overwhelming amount of Asian people that were getting into Harvard, which threw off kind of like where white people were becoming the minority and other races were becoming the minority because Asian people were just getting accepted so much. Does that mean you should make harder regulations on Asian people to get into college? I don't see the whole point of raising.
There's a case on that.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that then?
Well, there's a case on that. It's University of Michigan. One second. It's University of Michigan. I forget who it's against, but
wait, is it ongoing?
No, it was decided.
Oh.
That became it is a University of Michigan versus such and such. I forget who it was, but you can look it up. University of Michigan had a quota system that would allow for, again, you needed X amount of African Americans, X amount of Mexicans, or excuse me, Hispanic people, X amount of white people, X amount of Asians, and it was you would use the SAT score. So like any white person with a score of 1400 or above got in. Any African American with a score of 1000 or above would get in. Any Hispanic 1000 or above would get in. Any Asian student, any score of 1500 or above would get in. It
Well,
was
how's
something
that
like that.
fair?
And that's the thing. It wasn't. The Supreme Court threw out that system so that you couldn't do that. You can use diversity to build your class, but you can't use a quota system. You can't use like a scorecard. You have to take it as it was a totality of the circumstances. Now it came back, and I was in law school. I forget that it was University of Texas, Lawrence, I think, versus Lawrence. It was a white woman who went before.
It's always
the
a white
US
woman. It's always a white woman.
Well, it was a yeah. She went before. She applied to UT Austin, was rejected, and she came to find out that a student who had a similar GPA, SAT score, background had gotten in when she didn't. And I can't remember the holding of the decision. It came out, I want like 2012, 2013, when I was in constitutional law. And for the most part, I can't look it up right now, but because I just remember it was University
Well,
of
just
Texas. Let me
speak.
try-
Stop. You don't need to go into the whole fucking example. Just speak the main point.
I'm trying to remember it because I believe
You got to stop picking
Um,
examples you can't remember, man.
Fisher, University of Texas versus Fisher. That's what it was.
Carrie Fisher?
No, yeah. Oh no, I think it got remanded. No, not Carrie Fisher. It got remanded, then came back. And I'm just trying to think because it brought up the point that we were thinking of, and I just remember like a lot of cases there have been. Okay, it was Kagan, where she dissented. That let's see. Oh yeah, the policy isn't strict scrutiny, and that let's see, admission policy and standard strict scrutiny. So the judgment was incorrect based on the previous judgment predicate. Majority admissions court held that such cases are reviewable under the 14th Amendment, must be reviewed under strict scrutiny to determine whether the policies are precisely tailored to serve a compelling government interest. That's strict scrutiny, where a government policy, again, it has to be precisely tailored to institute a compelling government interest. It's a very high bar that the government has to clear for strict scrutiny, which is why anytime you get a case that goes before the Supreme Court, that goes before the federal system, everyone is trying to get to that strict scrutiny clearance, or as high as they can, either strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny, because those are very high bars to clear in terms of the government's interest to, again, discriminate, to be able to, I'm trying to think of the word here, to be able to regulate their policy. But what a lot of judges or what a lot of plaintiffs end up doing is they don't end up getting there. I believe that what a lot of universities do in terms of their admissions practices now, and again, this is just as, again, I want to go off the cuff.
Yeah,
This
you
is off
got
the
to
cuff.
you got to take off
It's-
the internet real quick because you're lagging on my screen.
All right, one second. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. So what a lot of them do, it's not a point system. It's just they look at the totality of the circumstances, because what the court, or what University of Texas and what Michigan, what all these bodies of all these educational bodies argue is they need to have their own ability, and the to them the benefit of a diverse student body is helpful for them because they are able to offer things that not a lot of other student bodies can be offered, not a lot of students can offer. When I went to law school, like there were different, what they called affinity groups, where there was the Asian American Pacific Islander Law Society. There was the Black Law Society, the Latin American Law Society, the Southeast Asian Law Society. I think there was like an Italian Law Society. There was other clubs about like sports marketing and things like that, but
A
there
better,
were ethnic groups that had their own.
I will say a better example is like if you have a bar and it now most of your clientele is now gay people. You end up eventually owning a gay bar where it gets labeled as a gay bar. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's just how it works. It's kind of like grouping. Eventually, if you have too many Asian students or too many people of a certain race, people are going to think that's what that school is, and they're probably going to decide their vote on whether they want to go to it or not. I was paid or I was going to be paid to go to college at Maryland University because I would be a minority because they have a very small percentage of white people there. And before the guidance counselor could even let me choose my thing, he said, I think we'll just keep you in this college, or we're going to keep you in this class thing over here until the class opens up, only because we don't want you to be a minority. I'm like, why would I care about being a minority at something if you're going to pay me to go to college instead of me going into debt trying to do so? It's like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, yeah, but we don't want you to feel uncomfortable. So why the fuck would I feel uncomfortable? And you start realizing that these people feel like they got to go above and beyond to be able to kind of choose and be able to help you out in situations that they might not understand a whole lot because it was a different time period of when they grew up. Now, my
Probably.
thing is there a sketchy territory when it comes to, okay, if you can't make it harder for those certain types of people to go to college or something like that, then does that mean, is it okay to be able to pay other people of a different race to be able to go to your college? Like be able to pay them, like being a minority. If you have more of Asian percentage of people going to Harvard or something like this big thing says, you can't make it harder for them. You should not make it harder for them just because they're better at, or they spend more time studying to be able to go to college. Like you can't make it, you can't raise it to 1,500 for them. You can't do that. But what you can do is you're able to pay other students of other races to go to your school to raise up the population of the whatever the minority is. Is that the sketchy territory, I'm guessing?
It's sketchy, but again, there are a lot of things that student bodies or administrators will do, I would think, in a way to either fix that or have it not be, again, on the basis of race or on the basis of gender or on the basis of national origin or ethnic identity. It would mostly be, that's kind of where they get into more sketchy territory, where we'll give a scholarship based on math or a scholarship based on leadership or a scholarship based on your grade on this class. And as it just so happens, if it may benefit a group that they're trying to entice to come in. Now, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But as far as I know, that is allowable under the different policies because, again, administrators can show, and you'd have, again, that's where you have to really start again. We were talking about earlier, going into the very nitty gritty of admissions, research, and funding. Now, again, like I said before, plaintiffs are chosen based on how strong of a case they make, and to show, again, it was that UT Austin versus Fisher case. Like that woman, she was had, again, the argument was, had she been a different race, she would have gotten in. Had and I think it's Wells, who was the couple denied federal benefits. Had they been a same-sex couple, they would have gotten those benefits under the federal law. Had Heller stayed in the state that they were in or done that, he would have been able to keep his gun. Like all these different plaintiffs, when they get brought up and put before the U.S. Supreme Court, they're almost unassailable based upon the facts that the plaintiff is trying to show. It's but not for this giant issue that the government, the state, the private entity, the whomever, the defendant, had it not been for this wildly unfair statute decision policy, things like that, my client would not have been harmed. So that is, in essence, where it all like comes from when it comes to like your basic plaintiff. So I think and that kind of comes from, well, just your regular plaintiff trying to show, again, plaintiff is always trying to get to that highest level of scrutiny that they possibly can. Because if you can make the argument about that, then it makes it very, very, very difficult for the defendant to justify it. And the defendant is always trying to lower that scrutiny bar because rational basis is super easy to clear. It's just, do you have a reasonable reason to do what you're doing?
Well, instead of
Reasonable
having
reasons.
hundreds of individual cases that might be on the same topic, but at different levels of, I guess, severeness, wouldn't we just do a creative community thing where there's an aspect of having one giant law case to talk about the amount of scrutiny that happens within these court systems? Because you're seeing laws get passed over a specific case in a certain rare scenario. Well, more likely than not, that 0.1% chance scenario is not going to happen to every single fucking person, but you're going to have hundreds and thousands of fucking cases dealing with the same exact core issue, but you're dealing with subsects in that fucking community issue. So shouldn't we have a bigger overall court case in the aspect of like, hey, there's a large amount of scrutiny happening at this school basis on race and a basis on IQ levels. We should be able to fix that, right? Instead of having fucking individual people fighting their own fucking fights and winning their own cases. For instance, labor force. Remember I told you my Maryland court case I won?
Yeah.
My buddy who was just on recently was talking about how he had the same exact issue in his state of Nevada. It was the same shit. It's happening there now. It was happening to us a couple months back. So I go like there, but individual cases though. So yeah, you're free. You get your debt paid. But what about the other like I still follow that Facebook page of all the people that are like, I owe $375,000. I literally have a heart attack for that person, because they're dealing with a whole lot of things. It's just a number. And then you get a call and it hangs up as soon as you pick up the phone, where you have to call. Oh, sorry, your case was dismissed. What do you mean my fucking case was dismissed? They tried to reach you and you didn't answer. That should be above all kind of look through by an investigation team to be able to take them to court and make it so not every single person has to fight their own individual fight. Because a lot of the time I feel like with court cases, it's just about if you're going to show up and pursue this thing. Half the time they give you a fine or something like that. And people go, guess you're going to have to pay it. Fuck that. We're going to court. Okay. Well, now we're taking it seriously. Might as well just let you have the win.
So again, there's a case about that.
Jesus Christ.
Those are class action lawsuits. And recently, a few years ago, the Supreme Court made it very hard for class action lawsuits to go forwards because it was a case against Walmart for unfair hiring practices. And it was a huge class. It was a very diverse class. But and again, this is going back to my federal civil procedure, and I think I ended that semester with like either with a B- or a C+.
I don't give a fuck about your grade in the class.
Because I'm trying to remember the
I'm asking you questions that aren't on any test. So
yeah. So what the case is, or what happened was, for a class action lawsuit to be sustainable, you need to have a class of all similar people. So if you're going to sue somebody on a class action basis against being, let's say, racist for having blue eyes, everybody in the class has to have blue eyes. If one person has brown eyes, it's not a valid class. So what defendants do, they try to strike down the class. So what the Walmart did in this situation was they said that class was too diverse, that there were too many different states, and the hiring process in those states are too diverse, they're too spread out. There's no way to say that any real way, shape, or form that class was a representative of the overarching people or the person, because you have to certify the class. It has to be a class representative. Brian Flores, for an example, it just came out like recently, where Brian Flores is suing the NFL in a class action lawsuit. He's the representative of a class of African Americans who are suing the NFL for unfair hiring practices on the basis of color. So, like, obviously a white person, or depending on how the class is structured, it has to be, again, only African Americans in that class. Walmart, in this example, went before the Supreme Court, said the class was invalid, and the Supreme Court agreed with them. So now it is a much harder to get a class certified on that basis, because you have to really dot your I's and cross your T's when it comes to class action suits. Now, there are attorneys, I'm not one of them, who specialize in class action suits because it's a huge class action lawsuits are massive. Do you watch Better Call Saul?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Sandpiper case is a really good example of a class action lawsuit and kind of showing throughout from season 1 through hopefully season 6 when it comes out, of the life and birth of a class action suit. The woman who is in season 3, 4, in season 3, who is the class representative that Jimmy convinces, spoiler alert for something that's been around for a couple of years now, so sorry, but who Jimmy convinces to settle the class suit and then goes back on how terrible of a person he is. That's the class representative. She's the woman who makes the decisions on the basis of all the different people all the different plaintiffs in that class. So you can see from her, because again, she's an elderly woman living in the Sandpiper facility and is affected by the issue. And Jimmy, Saul, and the different firms that are a part of that suit have to figure out and find all the different people who, again, live in Sandpiper facilities, who would be admitted into as a part of that class. So it's a very distinct and interesting mechanism that, again, it would have to be state to state for something like that. It is it's a very interesting hypothetical. You could probably, I don't think you could, it wouldn't be state to state. I don't think you could do it for like Maryland to Nevada. But you'd have to talk to a class action attorney, which I'm not one. But it's definitely something that's very intriguing. I'm intrigued by it.
I just think there needs to be, you're seeing a lot of individual cases happen, and then you wonder why there's there's a lot of like court cases that are taking months and months and months. It's like, is it set up that way to do that on purpose? Because I mean, I can't be the first person who's ever thought about just doing an overall blanket thing of like, we need better guidelines and restrictions for people so you're not having so many individual cases. Then the workload wouldn't be over consuming for the amount of judges that are out there. There's not that many judges out there. There's not that many people that are going to be a lawyer. There's not that many people that are going to be a judge. There's not that many people that want to pursue anything in the legal fields. I mean, it makes it more difficult and stuff too. Half the time I think I just want to pop into a random court case, listen to it, and just start fucking shooting my mouth off and seeing where I go with it. Because a lot of these things, it's like you're just watching you need someone from an outside perspective. I don't have any book smarts when it comes to knowing the laws, but I do have like an overall common sense when it comes to the factor of like, why is this doing this? Like sometimes those are the best types of lawyers as well too, the type that can think on their feet. Half the time I'm watching a court case, the people that win are the people that really pull something out of fucking left field. But a lot of times people are playing by the books. I mean, it's very interesting to me when I watch a court case and I watch a judge literally just like not even saying, oh, you can't say that's a runoff statement, or you can't say that, or you can't, like not interrupting and saying, nope, this is against that, this is against that, sustained. No, when I like to watch is when I see a judge sit there and really observe and not say a single word. And then when something comes up, well, this is going to be because of this. And did you do this? And then you're seeing like this interrogation that happens. It gets really entertaining to watch because you're like, holy shit, he's thinking about stuff I would have never even thought of. I don't think you can play by the book a lot of times when you're a judge. I think there's certain things you have to do when it comes to be, I guess, established as what your job profession is. But I think a lot of it is just being able to sense out if a person's a piece of shit or not, who's going to do the same exact thing over and over again. And a lot of times I know plenty of friends of mine who literally go, oh, that's Judge Purnell. All you got to do is say you found God and he'll let you off easy. And it's like, what? What are you talking about, dude? You're up to go to prison, basically. And they're like, well, just say you found Christ. That's how so many people get out of it. It's finding something that's relatable to the judge. Oh, maybe he redeemed himself. That person never redeemed themselves. The next day when they, get passed on that charge, they're out there doing the same exact shit they got caught for.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain, just from, my, again, base understanding or base knowledge, like there are some judges who look at certain things. There are some judges who don't look at any of those things. It depends on the judge, sometimes depends on the day you find them. But I will say, like, there was a pro se case where it was my first year of law school, between my first and second year of law school. And I was in the gallery, and all of a sudden, like a bunch of attorneys come in, And I was like, what's going on? Like, oh, like this is the pro, like you don't want to watch this. And it was a pro se plaintiff who, again, is just a person who's like, when you go before the judge yourself, you're pro se, no attorney. And it was a train wreck. You just couldn't look away. He was it a guy? Or was it, I can't remember. They were stumbling, trying like making points that didn't make any sense. The defense attorney is like trying to like do what they're supposed to do, and the judge is trying to like help the plaintiff to explain himself, but he can't explain himself at all. And rambling, not being clear, concise, like talking about things that have no bearing on the case whatsoever. And I felt a little bad, but it was also, a little. And one of the reasons why it's, lawyers don't
Get to the fucking point, Nick. Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry. Who was me? Like we were laughing at this guy. Like all the attorneys were just like in the back, like snickering and chuckling, and the judge had to like call order a couple of times because everyone in the back is just laughing at this poor bastard who just couldn't get through his statements. Hire a lawyer sometimes, especially like if it's something serious like that. And I remember there was another one a couple of years ago, the exact same thing. It was all these attorneys in the case. I had to go before the court for something. It was just a quick little matter. And the courtroom just swells with people. I was like, why is everybody here? Like, this can't be. It was like, and somebody nudged me, oh, just watch. And I was like, all right. And then they call this guy, and everyone just got like, it's like a hush falls over the courtroom. This guy comes up, and he's complaining about the system and complaining about the judge and complaining about this. And they're just like, this is like a defendant, like this is a verdict, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, like, what do you mean, judge? This doesn't, like, I never had my day. I'm like, no, you missed your day in court. Like, this is a I forget what the term was. This is a verdict. Like, I can give them whatever they want, and it's up to you to tell me like why you don't want me to do this, or like, and he starts going into like back in 1987 when I first bought this thing, and the judge is like, stop talking, get to the point. It was very funny for me, but again, what are you gonna do?
Well, that's the show.
All right, I got a few things coming up. I got a few good recipes. Again, back into the promoter thing. Big games coming up in about a week or so. Hopefully, this comes out around then. But if
It's
not,
not. It's gonna be like almost 3 weeks out.
All right. Well, I've got a few different blog posts that have been posted recently. Then, where visiting some breweries in Rhode Island and probably in Massachusetts. A few other recipes. I bought a pizza oven. So I'm going to be doing a lot of different experiments.
Follow my buddy Pizza in the Sack.
I already do.
Okay.
Actually, I just listened to that the other day. So I've got some different recipes coming up that involve both beer and other things.
Spiros, easygoing.
That's an old video.
Dude, that was funny as shit, man.
That video is at least 10 years old.
But I played it on the show.
I know you played it on the show. It's hysterical. It's so funny.
Waterloo. He said this place looks like New York, Manhattan. I was fucking dying, dude. Because I get it. I see it. He's got a lot in his head he's been thinking about, and he's trying to cut to the points that he's already figured out in his mind, but nobody knows what the fuck he's talking about.
That video, I saw that video on Tosh.0. Like, again, I think I can't remember. That's an old.
That's a
video.
That's a web redemption right there.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't think it was a web. It was just
a breakdown.
It was a breakdown about that. Man, those are funny. Like old school internet. Like I follow up. I follow Barstool. Kind of back to the diatribe. Like they're talking about Internet 1.0. Like the old school like videos from at least from 2004 to 2008, 2009. Do yourself a favor. Look up Fire Melon. All you have to do. If you want to go, it's 15, 20 seconds long, and it's like this looks promising. Oh god, this looks horrible. Oh god, this is fantastic. Worth it every time. But anyways,
I gotta play it on the show.
I'll play it on the show. It's all you have to do. Google Fire Melon.
Fire Melon.
Fire Melon. It is again.
One word or two?
2 words.
Is it content that's not going to make anybody throw up?
No, it's fine. It's harmless. It is fantastic and always still one of my favorite videos of all time. But unrelated to that, unrelated to melons, definitely check out the blog at www.thedrinkinglawyer.com. I'm on Instagram as well, posting a lot more pictures of legal memes and my dog. And again, you probably get a lot more, getting a lot more brewery trips and recipes as we start to get a little bit more into the spring and summer months. So
Is it watermelon ghost hot sauce?
no, it's just fire melon. It's a cantaloupe.
Oh,
You want me to play it?
I got it. Well, you type in that, it's not the top result. So
Sad days. Sad days. That's a fun.
hold on, trying to get it to load. I see a kid with a cut open cantaloupe.
Yep, that's it. That's the video.
Guess that's the melon.
Yeah. And it just you watch it, it's oh God, what's about to happen? Then it's oh God, this is a horrible idea. And then it's oh my God.
I'm gonna
Fantastic.
play it.
Go for it.
All right, ready?
Damn, Skippy, I'm ready.
This is when it comes out.
Holy shit!
It's yeah. It's
They
fantastic.
put gasoline in it.
Lighter fluid from what it looks like.
Oh my
Yeah,
god!
light it on fire. And again, it's as soon as you zoom out, you see the kid with the baseball bat, and Sandals like nothing good is going to happen here, but I can't look away.
Burn a
it's
couple of
fantastic.
leg hairs.
Yeah, and again, it's the oh shit, oh fuck,
Mhm. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. All the links will be in the description. If you want to look into his drinking profile or if you want to look into his law profile, either way, you can bring him to court on either charge.
Please don't.
Okay.